Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a September 10th edition of the MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. This is our fourth, I think, session of the month. We are in that time of year where all the stuff seems to happen in like a 90-day window of just absolute calamity, but all good. We're going to get to the housekeeping and then we'll get into some good stuff. So, if you don't already know where to go, mspinitiative.com. This is where we park pretty much everything that we do here. So, for example, this session is being recorded and we'll put it on our YouTube page, our podcatcher, and the sessions page of mspinitiative.com. You can scroll down and see all of them, rewind, play, subscribe, forward, like, all that good stuff. You know what to do. In basically 2 weeks, we're headed out to Denver, Colorado for the second MSP Community Minds of the year. We did Nashville earlier in the year, and actually the original MSP Initiative Community Minds event was in Denver. So we are coming back September 25th, 26th. If you go to the Community Minds tab on mspinitiative.com, you will see the 2-day agenda, which is a combination of MSP panels in the mornings and 2-hour workshop sessions in the afternoons. So you will see all of our MSP panelists and our workshop presenters. This is not a 45-minute death by PowerPoint with a credit card swipe at the end if you want to know more. We're bringing you people who have figured stuff out or have something, from a strategic value, we hope, to present to you. And this is a whiteboarding collaborative way. So this is the best way we know how people learn, right? Networking with people in the trench with, like you, and then ultimately picking the brains of experts from the industry. So check it out. By the way, it costs you absolutely nothing as an MSP to attend and register this event. There's no $3.99, $9.99, $12.99 registration fee. It is zero. You just got to show up, which we understand some time and some money to get there, and you got to take out of your business to come and learn. But who better than to learn from the people who are doing technology businesses, hopefully like you. So check it out, MSP Community Minds in Denver, September 25th and 26th. Then what we're probably better known for are the MSP community block parties. There are 4 left for the rest of the year. We are going to PAX 8 Beyond in Germany. We did PAX 8 Beyond in Denver earlier this year in June. We are headed to Berlin on October 14th. At 9 p.m. will be the MSP community block party in Berlin. It's a very beer, kind of brewery, beer hall kind of theme, which is perfect because it comes right after Oktoberfest, which, if you didn't know, ends in September in Germany. Little known fact if you Google it. So hopefully you'll join us there. Then we head out to Miami for DattoCon Miami on South Beach at the Fountain Blue. We are going to be on property inside of the Fountain Blue. Our event will start on October 29th at 9:30 p.m. So no reason to even get one step out of the front door and get an Uber, walk down the street. You literally walk into the lobby and into Live nightclub, which is on property. Then the big one of the year, which we do every year, is IT Nation Connect in Orlando. So that'll be the 6th of November. It'll be at 9 p.m. Again, we will be announcing our radio recognizable band or artist tomorrow on all the social media feeds. So if you haven't already guessed who it is, we dropped a couple of hints. Tomorrow you'll find out exactly who it is, and we can't wait for you to join us because we're throwing a concert and block party for the community. And then lastly, we finish out our year in Sydney, which we were just there in August, but going back again in November. It will be November 12th at 8:30 p.m. in Darling Harbor for DattoCon Sydney. All of these 4 block parties are absolutely 100% free. That's right. We're fooding you, beveraging you, networking you, giving you a good time, transporting you if necessary for free. If you're an MSP, please join us. It's literally for you and the community. Then we have some deals and offers for people from around the industry that you may or may not take advantage of, and our industry calendar, which goes through all the gauntlet of things happening between now and the end of the year, which is the busiest time of year. We'll reset that for 2025 once we get closer to January. That is all the housekeeping. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com. Today, we bring on a friend of the show and someone who helped us in Nashville at MSP Community Minds in Nashville, and coming again to MSP Community Minds in Denver. Sam from Dynamic Network Solutions. How you doing today, Sam?
Good, are you, George?
It's that time of the year, fall, football, conferences, block parties, a lot of air travel during this time of the year.
Yeah, I know it. I haven't seen the house in quite some time, so I definitely feel your pain.
100%. So, Sam, for people who don't know you and your company and your background, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into and stay in technology land, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So, name is Sam Chawkat from Dynamic Network Solutions. Started working at the organization back in 2006 when it was just like two guys in a basement, and that was after I did my stint in the federal government and realized that was not the place for me. So as a plucky 21-year-old, I said, "Hey, why don't I just leave this place and start up one of these things called an MSP and see what this works out?" So two of us in a basement. Now we're like 46 employees across like 4 or 5 states. So, we kind of figured something out. But there's always learning curves. There's always something you have to do every day, learn new processes. No formalized business training or anything of that nature. You just have to kind of figure it out as you go. And a lot of it's just looking at the client perspective and what they need, and then being able to develop solutions around it. Because at the end of the day, we get lost in fixing technology rather than using technology to help people, which is what literally pays the bills every day. Yep,
I
still there,
think
George?
George froze, Sam.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm actually on the phone with Michelle. So Michelle, you could say hi to Sam. He's on MSPR Live. Um, yeah, let's give George, I guess, a minute. I like how it froze on him though.
I
So
know he's got a
he
really
looked,
goofy look
yeah,
though as it froze.
he looks like the Grinch kind of.
Yeah, it's not a great look. Oh, there you go. He disconnected. I guess he lost internet.
Yeah, I guess he'll be coming back in just a moment. So everyone hang tight. It's like the first time I've ever had to do this.
Oh, first time he's ever like frozen up and you've
Yeah,
got
like
to like
totally froze. Sometimes he has like if he's on his phone, but um looks like he's in his office. Do, 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 do. All right. There we are.
Difficulties, but I'm back. Sorry about that, Sam. Still with us?
it's still here.
All right, awesome. Well, now that everybody knows a little bit about Sam, let's talk about MSP Community Minds in Nashville. We'd love to hear your experience. I know you're on a panel with other
Mhm.
MSPs, again in Denver. So just curious, what was your opinion of the event? Did you find it valuable? Would you recommend other MSPs join us there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely valuable. There's always some kind of, I mean, every conference, with the exception of certain ones that we'll leave unnamed, you always get some kind of negative information. So I always tell everybody going out to conferences is a must. You need to go to every and all conferences, but they kind of add up in cost. And so particularly ones that you don't really have to incur that much of an expense, you definitely want to attend. And secondly, you want to attend ones that you get a lot of feedback from peers, and yeah, you have some vendors there too, because that's how a conference has to be paid somehow. But at least it's not like death by PowerPoint and like a sales pitch all the way through. So I definitely recommend people to go to it. At least try it out for once and see if it's your cup of tea. But you only get out what you get in. So if you put in a lot of like socializing time, talking to people, learning things, you're going to get a lot more value out of it. If you're just going to sit there and not really ask questions, not really hang out and ask your peers other things, you're only going to get so much out of it. So it's really designed for you to network and talk to people. So if you don't do that, it's really not going to help you out as much.
Fair enough. And the panel that you're on, what are we talking about?
It's town hall, so whatever the hall wants me to talk about.
What are some of the things from the town hall session in Nashville did you find interesting?
Well, I mean, I was on it, so I found myself interesting, I guess. But I mean, it's hard to really tell because when you're presenting, you're kind of more focused on what you want to say rather than like what others are saying. But one of the great things that came out of that town hall was just talking about like how to deal with certain clients that won't accept like maybe your pricing strategy or maybe your recommendations, and hearing from other people like how do you address that. And I think the other thing that we also touched on that is really a problem in this community, to be honest with you, is analysis paralysis. Nothing really gets implemented, nothing gets done because everybody just wants to make something 100% before they just sail the ship and fix it along the way. And that stifles progress and also productivity. So it's really, we talk through strategies of like, how did we go through things of like an evaluation of a product to production, and how long is that roadmap and that timetable? And there's certain people that, you know, will take something, maybe they'll buy it internally, some product or something, and sit on it for a year before they even push it out to anywhere to their clients. And so it's really talking through strategies of like, how do you find thought partners in your client base to be able to work with you on new initiatives? How do you pitch it to them to allow them to do things like that? And how does it work well for packaging and also selling down the road too? So those are kind of the couple of things that came to mind. All right, did we got you, George? You popped out again.
All good. Had a little bit of a
All right.
confusion down, but as all good technology people do, a backup plan, disaster recovery strategy, and here we are again.
Yeah, there you go.
So thanks for a little bit of patience there.
Sure.
It's curious, Sam. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, a large focus of your company is the education vertical. And
Yeah, that's a good assumption. Yeah, we do maybe about 80%, 70-80% in the education vertical, the remainder in various other different forms.
okay, and then you're based out of like Maryland, kind of Baltimore region, I think, your company,
Mhm.
but you're operating nationally. Is that correct?
In the continental United States, yes.
Okay. So like, do you have people in all of those states, or how do you manage this at scale?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. So not all states do we have like people that are there like full-time techs. We have certain like states where depends on the opportunity. Certain states are just more project work that we do out there. So we have a lot of different either engineers or other kind of people that work within that area that we can be able to tap onto as resources. Building a very strong partner network is important whenever you try to go anything on a national basis. So like whether it's another peer, whether it's somebody else, whether it's a different kind of functionality, you always need to build a very strong partner network in order to be able to even attempt to do anything on a national scale. Without that, you're just going to be really grasping at straws. And how do you deliver on the quality and the excellence that you try to do without having to staff up and do everything from that standpoint, and then it never gets done. And then you get the analysis paralysis, and everything gets what if the death, and nothing really progresses. Um, so there's a point where you need to have strong partners to be able to help you out from certain things. However, for quality control, you need to have internal people that's part of that process. So you can't just leave it all up to partner relationship I've seen it too many times where some people just find a partner, sub it all the way out, and then that's it. That's all they do. They kind of hands off from the whole perspective. And then when that happens, you see the quality control starts going down, down, down. So
Hmm.
it's only as good as the people that you have internally that's managing those relationships.
So when you say partners, right? Like it could be somebody you met at an event or a trade show or another, some, it could be, sole consultant. It could be another IT technology
Just depends
firm,
on,
all of the above.
yeah, all the above. It
And
just all depends on what makes best sense for your organization.
sure. And then like, how do you structure, like, do you have like a preset, agreement terms? Like, how do you usually engage those people?
So it all depends on, like, for us, like that's a little bit of a secret sauce kind of
Okay.
category, but
Don't give
like
away anything
outside of that,
proprietary for sure.
no, I definitely won't unless there was a check being involved. But
Of course.
literally the way it works is like for us is like there's always an engagement that needs to happen. There has to be a vet, and then once it's vet and then looked at from that standpoint, you always have to have some legalese in place to protect you. So you have to make sure you have all your ducks in a row for that. But then it's a lot of it has to be based on the vet. Like, to be honest with you, like you have to know what you're doing and have to know like how to interview and look at a potential partner
Mhm.
before you open up Pandora's box into a nightmare.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's been certain times in our history where we had to like wing it with some partners, and you really didn't have a good feeling, but my gut said, "Hey, this person's gonna work out. Like, you just got to go." It's like any kind of relationship or any kind of hiring process. Sometimes you can do everything on paper, but sometimes you have to gut it too. And so that's, you have to make sure that you understand how people are and what they're going to do for you, and to understand if they're going to be a good fit. And luckily we've done a really good job that on a personal level, so like on all of our employees, so we just kind of apply the same thing when it comes down to partners.
Cool. And then like, I know this might be an old concept, but it definitely fits this conversation, or this part of it is like, how do you protect the relationship when you're working with another entity, partner, company that does the same thing you do, right? Like, how do you make sure that the rules and the lines don't get crossed here?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you have to develop swim lanes, and you have to at least make sure they're very transparent at the beginning.
Mhm.
And by transparent, it's you need to have a meeting to kind of go over it, and then in further enforcement in paperwork and legalese, in regards to like what is and what is not allowed in this arrangement, so that not only is it just a conversation, but also there's some paperwork that backs it up too. Luckily we've never had to go down that route, but we always have the paperwork to be able to back us up from that perspective of like partner engagement letter. Before that, you obviously want to do like anything from an NDA standpoint, just so that there's nothing from that perspective that gets out. There's always like things you always want to watch out for, like obviously client poaching, employee poaching. Those are the kind of big things you want to watch out for too. But as long as you have your ducks in a row, you have these conversations, it makes sense. And you have to be kind of good at being able to read people. That's really the important thing. And so you really want to be able to meet with those leadership people and really see like, can you feel like they're actually going to deliver on their promises? Do you feel like they're actually stand up? Do you feel like, everything works out well from that capacity? And if you have the hairs standing on the back of your neck for any reason, you should just abort. Like, don't even proceed. Like, it could be on paper, everything looks great, but you should follow your gut on it, and don't what if everything to death. That's the other thing, or you're never going to get anything done. So you have to be able to say, okay, I see everything good on paper. They've signed the agreement. I've met with their C level. Like, I feel the warm and fuzzies here. Like, this is a good arrangement. We should be proceeding with this. And if not, move on to the next one. Don't what if anything to death, or you're never going to move forward.
So, I mean, 80% of your business being education focused, how do you find new clients? Do you do a lot of educational style events, or is it just by reputation, or how do you
Sure.
go out into the pool and bring in new business?
A lot of it's reputation, to be honest with you. Like in this industry, you have to have a lot of reputation to be able to help out. A lot of it's also just knowing the right people, networking events, those kind of things, education sessions, those kind of things as well, also help out. But it's just really being connected into that community really helps out from that perspective. Whatever niche that you decide to go into, it's the same rules apply. If it's accounting, if it's insurance, whatever the case may be, you need to be really connected into that community. Just find something that's your focus and just be passionate about being in that community, and the opportunities will grow from that. If
Mhm.
you are just, sending blanket emails out, random social posts here and there, it's not going to land anywhere, to be honest with you. You have to really be connected in that community to be able to vouch for you, because as new players, they see new players every day, but to actually stand out from the pack, you need to be able to have that reputation. And if you don't, you need to start building it by having that community approach. And that's really the big piece of it. And it's the same thing for any kind of market segment. It doesn't have to be just education, just pick one. If they have a community, get into it.
Fair. One of the things that you talked about earlier in the session and at Community Minds was, and I'll ask the question, a couple ways, but it seems like you're more business development, sales focused, right? But like you're at that place now, but you came from the technical side, right? So like you eventually got to that part of the business. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then
Sure.
back to your point of, hey, I don't want to sell something if I can't deliver it. That's usually where things ultimately melt down, right? I pitch, we've all in the MSP space seen this on the other side of the aisle, right? It's like, hey, you sold me this super cool technology and it never actually did what you told me it was going to. Like, you kind of missold me here, right? So like, I think that, idea is what scares people about going and even offering new things, new bundles, new technologies, new product lines, new services, whatever you want to categorize it as, because they're worried that they haven't gotten it to a proficiency level.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do
So
you
I
balance?
guess the question is, like, how do you balance like getting something new and actually being able to package it and get it to a certain level, I guess? Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to like that whole thought partner initiative that's always a good one to use. If you have a client that you want to bring on this new piece of service or offering, and you might see a need there, you could then be able to go to that existing client and build that thought partnership of just saying like, hey, I'm thinking about adding this. I would like to run it past you and have you be like my guinea pig and test case and stuff like that. It'll benefit your organization. Here's the way that if you put in some time on this, like the thing I'm going to need back from you is just time for feedback
Mhm.
and probably referral, to and an understanding of like, hey, this may not be smooth right out of the gate, might be bumpy, a little bit of that nature. And in turn, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you like a lifetime discount or the first year discount or whatever you want to use to pitch to your thought partner. But in essence, that allows you to be able to perfect the secret sauce on
Mhm.
any kind of new initiative without having to like get to the point where you're 100% ready before you start deploying. You
Sure.
still need to do some internal stuff to play around with within the organization and stuff like that. But you don't want to wait till something is like 100% before you even think about pitching it. So you want to make sure that there is like some kind of thought partnership you have with maybe another client or something along that lines that can really give you some real world experience and thoughts on something.
That's fair. Um, like every 3 to 5 years, like the industry comes up with new punchlines, right? Like 3 years ago, cybersecurity until like you couldn't sell any more products. And then now it seems to be like this concept of AI, although that seems to be very vague, this, what that means.
Hmm.
Um, have you looked into AI? What do you think? Is there today on September 10th, 24, is there even a business case for it or is it too soon?
Well, so there's two areas obviously where you could look into it. There's the easy and then the more robust. So the easy area is just selling licenses. Copilot, Gemini, there's a bunch of different licenses you can sell out there, and that at least gets you, I don't know, relevant in AI. You can sell some Copilot, you can talk about how Copilot's awesome, that kind of thing, but you're not really like doing anything really transformative yet. It's really just selling licenses for the most part. Some of the stuff that we're working on is more business transformation through AI, and like working on like certain development projects with AI in order to like automate business processes that they have internally within an organization. That takes a little bit more effort. You really need to understand like what the business process is first, and really map it all out before you can really talk about automating it. But that's kind of like the next steps that we're working on from that standpoint of like helping, organizations, more embrace it. Um, and we'll see how it happens in the next 6 months with this whole AI bubble. We'll see if it ends up popping or if it ends up staying strong. I feel like there's still going to be, it's like Pandora's box. The box is already open. There's going to be some form of AI. How much more it's adopted, how fast are organizations wanting to adopt it versus Fortune 500, to be seen a little bit. But it's definitely here to stay, and it's definitely in your face. So if you're not talking about it, you're not being relevant. And so that's really the big thing that you have to now really focus on, is just, hey, we need to stay relevant. So we need to have something to talk about when it comes down to AI, even if it's just that it's here and here are some options you can be able to get client, if we're not really like at that level to do anything like a business process or a business transformation process.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like either are you using an outside partner, or do you have internal people that are in like a DevOps or coding position? Because like some of the stuff you're talking about, right, to take the off the shelf solution and like get it to do different things isn't like click, point, and go, right? It requires building things.
Sure. Yeah, we have some DevOps people that we end up billing out for that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's some internal resources like that. There's also some really smart people that work for us that are even on the technical side that like to dabble in that arena. So like, gives them an avenue to kind of stretch their wings, kind of a thing.
Sure. I know a lot of MSPs like, lightly touch on things just from historically, like scripting and RMM, that kind of stuff, right? But like most MSPs don't have like a dedicated coder on staff. I mean, maybe the bigger ones do, but the average MSP probably doesn't have that role filled.
Yeah, so then you backfill with some part-time role. Like it doesn't have to be a full-time role. Like right now, most MSPs have an RMM and they do scripting. There's
Mhm.
not like a full-time person. They just have a person that likes to do it on the side. So that doesn't mean that you have to only pigeonhole them into one area. But make sure it's like something that you can continue to deliver. Scripting is not really client facing, so it's not really, as in their face. So just make sure if you are trying to look at another avenue, whether it's doing even telephony, let's say, you need to have some kind of people to be able to, even if it's on a partial time gig that they can help out onto it, they can at least be able to deliver something.
No, that's fair. Um, how often, Sam? Because it's in all the forums and the Facebooks and the Reddits and the Discords and the Slack groups, right? People are just like this product versus that product, this vendor versus that contract term. Like, how often are you evaluating a vendor change? Like, I'll give you two categories. I already have something in place and like I'm gonna replace it, or I'm just evaluating a net new that I don't have currently.
Sure. Net new every year. Like there's nothing to stop you for net new. There's always something net new that maybe you're not offering that's not going to compete with something else that you're offering, or it's something else that you currently are utilizing. So you need to be looking at that every year. If you're not, you're just going to stay behind. If that, it could be even shorter than that. Could be every 6 months, because there's new things that are being created. Just because you're looking at it doesn't mean you're buying it and fully implementing it, but you have to keep your eye open for different things. Like particularly now in this whole AI perspective, like there's AI integration into service tickets, AI integration for this, AI, like if you're not even looking at any of that stuff, you should be. Um, just because you can adopt a lot of that internal AI mechanism to be able to supercharge your operations. And some of it is garbage, I'll be completely honest with you. And some of it's actually pretty cool. But then you go to the next part of the evaluation, is the juice worth the squeeze? So like you have to make a value proposition on your return on investment of like, I'm going to spend this much money per you person per month on this license. What is that going to really return back on investment? Is it worth it? Do I need to license everybody? Can I just license a subset of people? Those kind of things to make that evaluation. And then I always recommend you start slow, like put it on for a couple people, try it out, have them use it, but you have to get on their case because so many people are resistant to change. So like you have to, like if you're going to turn it on, let's say it's some subscription and you're going to turn on to your sales folks, you have to get on their case constantly about like, hey, are you using it? Hey, are you using it? Well, no, not really. It was like, I don't care. The next thing you're doing is you're using this thing. Like I need you to use it and put it into production for me to see if it's worth us expanding on this or not. And if they're really hesitant of using it because it sucks or it's clunky or the training is a pain, like that just automatically tells you like, hey, I don't need to push this out any further. Like it's done. We're just going to get rid of it altogether. And a lot of the vendors are then going to push back and they're going to say, well, we could do training sessions. We could do like, no, my people don't have time for that. Like if it's not that easy to handle and it's not giving me that much in return, this is too much investment on my side. Money and indirect and indirect costs. Like those are the things that I always tell people. Like everybody just looks at the dollar amount of what something costs. They don't look at the indirect cost of training, implementation, how do you write policy and procedure. And I always tell everybody, if the only thing you can think about is dollars and cents, then then apply your hourly cost onto it. Like what do you as a business owner, because you do cost the business money. Yeah, you may, take money out at the end of the year, that kind of thing, but you have a base salary, you have benefits, you have all that stuff. Calculate what your base cost is to the organization to just have you there and multiply that the number of hours you have to work on this thing to implement, plus the actual cost of the actual unit, whatever it is per month or whatever the case may be. Take that total cost and say, how much return am I getting on that total cost? If you can't think of it that way, then you have to look at a time mechanism. But like I always say, just put some dollars around it. You'll realize whether something's worth it or not. And so like if implementation is so high on something, and then it obviously triples out the cost, and you probably don't want to move ahead with it. But if the implementation's here and the cost is here, and it actually returns an investment up to here, then it's worth looking into and trying to do. And that's on net new. Existing stuff, usually it's anywhere between like 3 to 5 years is a reevaluation on existing stuff. It just all depends on like other factors though. So like, existing stuff, you always want to evaluate every 3 to 5 years for price and features and a lot of other fun stuff. If there's something game changing in the market, maybe you move that up a little bit, but for the most part, it's 3 to 5 is what you evaluate. And the bigger thing is like when you're looking at changing RMM, your PSA, any of those big core elements, your documentation system, you always have to figure out that as much as they promise you, they're not going to transfer data. It's not going to happen. Everything's going to be perfect. There's going to be some rebuild process part of this. So again, it goes back to, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like changing your entire PSA, is it worth making that change for having this one report that you can run on occasion versus all of the retraining, all of the data manipulation, all of the other stuff that has to go into it, all the integrations you have to set back up and everything? Is it worth it? If it comes down to a financial exercise, you have to then say, okay, the cost per year I'm saving with this PSA is X. The amount of money that time that I have to put into it is Y. What is that return? When's my break even point? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? So usually you want to be anywhere between like a 1.5, 2 year mark on a break even point on any of that stuff. Obviously, if you can get better, the better. But if you end up going like your break evens like the end of 2 years or 3 years, you're pushing longer than that, then it's really not worth doing. In those cases, you want to have your break even point right around in that like less than 2 year mark.
Mm.
But if you're not evaluating it from that standpoint, that's the other thing you have to evaluate too, of just like, okay, this is like maybe 10 cents cheaper per unit than what I'm paying right now. But that 10 cents cheaper, also with all the time that it takes for me to break even on this, it's going to take 3 years at the new rate for me to do it. It's not worth me making this gigantic change for that if the features are exactly the same. So there's a lot of people who do that jumping for like 10 cents cheaper one place or 50 cents cheaper, but you got to do the evaluation financially and just look at it and say, like, where's your break even? Where does it end up saving you money? Is that in the appropriate timeline? And if it's not, and it's really stretched out, it's really not worth making that change either.
No, that's fair. That's good advice because everybody's always selling you the next best thing, right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it throughout your journey, but how many times have back to the juice worth the squeeze, right? How about you sold me a vision that never happened either, right? Like single pane of glass. You probably read that 10 billion times. Did it ever happen? I don't think so. There's 18 panes of glass. I don't know where this single thing came from, but it was a great marketing line at the time.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of like what they want to do is always one single pane of glass, blah 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 blah. I mean, like it's a good marketing ploy. It still works, to be honest with you. I mean, like a lot of people like it because they like to consolidate. A lot of people like to consolidate their billing, consolidate their resources, consolidate where they go for alerting. It's a definitely a tactic, but that consolidation piece, it just all depends on like what are you getting out of it and what is it going to be the investment for it. So yeah, you can see it all one single pane of glass, but it requires 50 hours of you and an engineer beating your heads at it to make it work. It's okay. I'll go to two different tabs. It's fine.
Yeah, fair. So how often do you send somebody other than yourself to an industry event? Like let's say somebody from your technical team or somebody from your sales team, right? So that they can start to like hear it firsthand rather than trickle down the lane.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and to backtrack for a second there, I know it's not really related, but yes, your assumption was right. My background is technical, but there
Okay.
got to a point where when in any organization, I always recommend this too. Like, there's going to be a point in your organization when as you grow, you're going to have too many nerds. There's got to be a guy that goes out there and talks to people, and you have to be that guy sometimes. Even if you don't like being that guy, you have to learn to be that guy or girl or whomever, or hire a person to do that. For me, it was, hey, at this pace, I'm just going to be along with the rest of the other nerds out there. So I have to change my persona to be more personable, business focused, and that's kind of like my life story. But
No,
not
I mean,
everybody can do that. But it's helpful because it gives me the ability to detect BS. So like anybody's telling me any technical BS, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like I used to do that stuff. I knew how long it took. Like that's just BS. I'm out of here. So like when I'm doing partner engagements, super valuable because when I'm partnering with somebody and they're saying, oh no, that job's gonna take it's gonna take us like 25 hours. Like, no, it's not. It's not that complicated. You just do this, you do this, this. And I was like, oh, you know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. So take that quote and cut it in half. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. You were
no,
saying about going to trade shows.
yeah. Like how often do you, I'm like, clearly you have attended events because you've had enough to be able to tell people what to do, what not to
I've
do from your
I've,
perspective.
I've been around the conference circuit. Yeah.
How often do you send somebody else to get to absorb firsthand?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like it just depends on like a couple different factors. So one factor um, is it material that speaks specifically to them
Mhm.
versus just
General.
randomness?
Yeah.
Because like, my service, like I have many different department heads. So I have a department head that does project management. I have a department that does service, and I have another department head for sales. So it's really just like I need to send them to conferences that really speak to them, or at least has agenda items that really speak to them. The conferences that are just generic conferences, they're hard for me to wrangle their attention into the one thing that I need them to focus on.
Yeah.
So it's really identifying the right conferences to send them to. And a lot of that has to be, you have to go to it yourself to really like
Yeah.
see it, because an agenda is just an agenda until you actually go there and actually be a part of it to say, oh, okay, I see how it's working, how it runs, what kind of concepts come out of this. Be really good for this person. I know their personality fit. This would work out well. So outside of just like content, you also want to look at the conference flow itself. How they deliver their content, how the networking sessions work, how does that work? Because if I have an introverted project management guy and I'm sending him to a super social conference, he's not gonna get anything out of that. It's gonna be just completely waste of time. So it's really about like how it works is very important too. So by going through the paces yourself. Um, the other times where I really want to use them, to be honest with you, is like if I'm sitting there saying like, "Hey, we should go left," and they're like, "I don't know," and they're still struggling with the idea. I was like, "You're going to this conference," and it's because you're gonna have to learn that you do have to go left. And here's a reason why you should go left. Like I'm not doing a good job demonstrating it or explaining it to you, but I want you to go to that conference. And it's really more of a team building, like kind of like exercise. Cause yeah, at the end of the day, I have ultimate veto power. I could just tell them we're going left. I don't really care. That's it. And shove it down their throat. And yeah, every day I have that right, but I try to use that sparingly as much as I can. Just because, like, at the end of the day, you want people on your team that want to follow you moving forward and charging up that hill. And if you're constantly just shoving stuff down their throat, they're not going to believe you. They're not going to have faith in you. And so sometimes faith is something that has to be developed, but you have to be able to give them an idea. And it's very much like that movie Inception. If you don't watch that movie Inception and learn a lot from it, you should learn tons from it, because the best ideas that people have that you're trying to get them to follow you to do is inception ideas, not ideas that you're telling them, because then they fight it all the way through. But if you plant a seed in their head and you send them to a conference and it further grows and develops from there, and it makes it seem like they came up with the idea, you're getting the agenda across. Who cares who came up with the idea? We're moving forward. We're charging the hill. I don't need the credit for it. Like it doesn't matter. But as long as they're able to come to that realization on their own, then it's more solidified. It's more bought in. It's more moving forward rather than me just shoving down an idea down their throat. And not to say that doesn't happen. It does happen on occasion where it's like I don't have the luxury of time to do that, but I try, like I said, to play that card very sparingly, but I know I always can play that card.
Yeah, carrot versus stick. All right, let me flip to another one. I talked about this scenario several times since a month or two ago, but as you know, as a guy from Maryland, Northeast, right? I want to see
Sure.
what your hypothetical conversation would look like in this case. So CrowdStrike,
Okay.
right? You
Mhm.
you selected CrowdStrike as a vendor in your stack. It's part of your, your deliverable and people who adopt the package that you're selling, right?
Sure.
Obviously, you know what happened, right? And oops, right? That's
Mhm.
from the vendor side. And now your end customer, we're past the point of remediation, right? Everybody got affected. You got everybody back to workable point, which probably isn't great, but you dealt with it the best you could. Now your end customer
Sure.
comes to you, the check signer from your end customer comes to you and says, Sam, hey man, saw the news. I understand, right? Wasn't you. You didn't, cause the problem. And a lot of people were down at once, got it. But we have no idea why you selected this vendor. You told us it was the best, and we just went with your recommendation. How are you going to make me whole, right? My company was affected. We had to deal with all this nonsense. There was a lot of pain and suffering. What are you going to do for me to make it right? What do you say in that conversation?
Sure. I mean, a little off the cuff there, but I'll have to
I
come
mean,
up with
listen,
something.
I'm
Yeah, no. You're good. You're good. You're good. So, I mean, I have a lot of information on this CrowdStrike stuff because I post too much stuff on LinkedIn about it, and to be honest with you, my frustration around it. And so, like from that perspective, I'm going to tell the client as a whole and just be like, hey, listen, you know, us making you whole we have demonstrated that by going above and beyond and trying to make sure we take care of that, address the issue. We addressed the issue that wasn't caused by our team, was caused completely by this other team who we literally came in, were very invested, trained our entire team over, and they have tried and true cybersecurity methods that work. And in essence, they're the Cisco of the cybersecurity world. And so that's the reason why people pick them. That's why people love them. And that's why it's a very good brand and name to utilize. And they've been doing a fantastic job. However, this, in my opinion, the cause and the reaction to it is unacceptable by any standards. And there are, even though there's organizations who think they're too big to fail, we don't believe in that. We believe that an organization has an ultimate responsibility to every client that it has, whether big or small. It has an ultimate responsibility to it to make sure that things are safeguarded and protected. And they obviously grew too fast, and they didn't really have proper security controls. Unlike us, which we actually make sure that we run patches locally, internally in our systems before we push them out to your site client. That's why you don't get patches the same day. You get patches like a week or two delayed because we run them internally, make sure they don't break anything before we push them out to your system. So really the place where we've made you whole is we have made sure that even though this was not caused by you, not caused by us, we went above and beyond and got you back up and running. Now, how are we, the conversation should really be, how are we protecting you from this not happening again? And that's really our focus going forward here. And our focus around that is we have switched vendors to XYZ. And XYZ is in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. It is like the next brand from that perspective. And to be honest with you, we would have stayed with CrowdStrike through all this, but we just didn't like how they handled this entirety of this situation from cause to effect. And from that, we have decided to safeguard you as our client and all of our clients going forward, the painful process of relearning, training, and readapting all of our systems to a new product, because we, unlike them, safeguard our clients from any potential type of issue as much as we can avoid, and we take that responsibility very close to heart. That's why we're investing all this time and energy to do this complete switch. And for you, from the endpoint perspective, you don't see any difference. It's going to be silent. And furthermore, your costs are going to be about the same. And so we are going to make sure that that happens to more focus on not making you whole. That's already been done. We took care of that 6 months ago or 3 months ago. What we're talking about now is preventing this from ever happening again, even if it was caused by a third party. And this is how we do that.
Okay, I mean, but you don't have control, right? Like I appreciate you're doing due diligence and you're training your team and you're switching vendors and that's great. I surely don't want to pay any more than I already have because I think I'm paying a lot. But that being said, you don't have control of these vendors upstairs, right? What if the vendor you select has a similar issue? How do you like what is the strategy to prevent the delay in that vendor having a problem and us reducing downtime, right? Like I got a business to run. I need my people to work. Is that spare computers? Is that how do we get back to working faster?
Sure. Yeah. So part of that is taking the same kind of approach that we've done for just even Microsoft patches and stuff like that to be able to go ahead and like apply those internally onto our lab environment to test before they even hit your production environment. So we're even talking about pre something even happening by having it blow up our lab before it blows you guys up from that standpoint. So from a
Let me pause you
remediation,
though, but you were doing that with CrowdStrike. It seems like they had control of this updating thing, right? Like, so I don't know if you had that, I don't know if you have the lever to pull or not in that case.
yeah, in that situation with CrowdStrike, we did not. But obviously, because of CrowdStrike, that is a lever now that needs to be in place for anybody to be a trusted vendor for us to utilize. We
Okay.
need to make sure that those safeguards are in place. And if that lever does not exist, then they don't need to be part of our product line to be able to go ahead and potentially damage our clients. So it's
Okay.
one of those new factors that we have to now come in of just saying when we evaluate a product or evaluate a vendor, can we have that level of control or not? And if it's not, and we're totally beholden to them, it's part of our evaluation process now, of making sure that they're not part of our vendor stack. Just because then at that point they're not going to be there to back up anything. I mean, look at CrowdStrike; they didn't help us out at all through this process. Except they
Mhm.
sent us a $5 coffee gift card that didn't work, which also that wasn't a great look for them
Am I
too.
allowed to decide what the replacement is here? Because like I just, I'm curious. Do I need to get more involved in the vendor selection? Because I again, all I'm trying to do is not be in the same position next time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you would like to be a part of that process, I'm more than happy to have you part of that committee. Keep in mind, though, that that process and ultimate selection still has to be done by us. We'd
Mm,
love to get your impact and we'd love to get your input. But at the end of the day, if we're supporting it, we have to be the one making that call at the end of the day because we're ultimately responsible for it. You're paying us to be that person to be responsible. But if you'd like to be a member of it, we don't have to be. We more than welcome to have some additional feedback before we make final selections from that standpoint. But going back to your other question about like how do we safeguard? So there are a lot of preventative strategies that we can try to start looking at doing. Those being like whether it's a spare machine or more like image-based backups of all your machines from that standpoint, which is another way that we can also talk about like other cybersecurity preventative strategy, because as we always say, backup is our last line of defense. So
mhm,
even if, let's say, we had CryptoLocker hit onto a machine, yeah, it would still give you about the same kind of like experience. That one machine is down. Yeah, we've contained it everywhere else, but that one machine is down and it takes time to build that machine back up again. So the
mhm,
same strategies we use for that, we can then apply onto a more global scale for your environment as that secondary protection. And we're killing two birds with one stone, preventing a thing from a crowd strike, not necessarily to happen, although we've done a lot of preventive strategies to make sure we're picking the right vendors. But should it happen again, how do we recover quickly
mhm.
as our last line of defense after, if in case it gets through all of the other preventative steps that we have in place?
Okay. All right. I mean, I've been reading a bunch of stuff online after all this came out, like I'm sure everybody else has. And a lot of people are saying that we should revert everything back to prem based technology and like maybe move away from the cloud. What's your opinion?
Well, obviously, you can definitely go down that route if you choose to. There's nothing that stops you from doing that. There's still software and licenses that allow you to do that. However, completely being disconnected from the cloud, I don't think is a possibility nowadays. I don't think any manufacturer will allow you. Let me look at Microsoft. Yeah, you could buy versions of Office that you can install on there, but even they dial back to the cloud to get updates.
Hmm.
Look at Office 365 now as a completely cloud-based subscription process. That cloud is here and it's going to continue to consume. And even if let's say you did on-premise, like let's say Symantec, we're going to go real old school and go back to that. It still phones home into a cloud to get updates to apply locally and eventually push out to all your machines. So this
Hmm.
CrowdStrike issue doesn't necessarily say that like, oh, we should go away from the cloud. It just says that we need to do a better job at not trusting these larger companies because we, as they are larger and as they grow, we all, even us included, all had that understanding, and you as well, client, that hey, they're a big company, they're going to be able to double check their work and make sure things are working well, and we cannot take that risk. We cannot take that risk because we know that this is the way they react, so we
Hmm.
need to do a step better. And we've already taken steps like that because obviously we have a secondary cloud backup for our Office 365 that we currently have for you, client. And that secondary cloud backup is in a totally separate cloud. And why is that? Because we know Microsoft is a big organization, or not too big to fail. Maybe they may make an oops too. So we need to safeguard that. We put that stuff in a separate third-party cloud so that in the event Microsoft's having a problem and they wipe away the backups too, that's okay. We'll restore back from this third-party cloud. So while we can't necessarily negate 100% of the risk, we're trying to mitigate it as much as possible. And there's a lot of preventative steps that we put in place because of this. And now we have recovery steps on top of it and being able to safeguard our environment should it ever happen again.
All right. One last thing then. Like I appreciate you got a lot of clients and I'm just one of many. Like
Sure.
if I want to be moved to the top of the line, right? In the fix list, what does that look like?
Top of the line of the fix list, define the fix list. Are you talking about every day or when
No,
something
no,
like this
like
happens?
if another CrowdStrike happens, instead of I'm number 50 on the list of people to get fixed or remediated. I want to be number 2.
Sure. I mean, if that's the case, we can probably develop some kind of plan or architecture around it. But my goal would not necessarily be figure out a plan to bring you up into number 2 and charge you more money for something that you may or may not use as an insurance policy, but rather look at strategies to be able to say, how can we prevent this and mitigate it to a point where we don't have to deal with it? And if we do, the resolution and fix doesn't require us to have to charge you something for us to be able to roll people out there really quickly, but something that is automated or something that we can be able to go ahead and enact change remotely so that we're still controlling your costs and still providing that value. Yeah, I could charge you a makeup plan of like VIP rate and you pay every month for that. But then you're paying for something that you may or may not use, like an insurance policy that's not really mandated. So I much rather take the time and say, why don't we look at investing in backup strategies that we can initiate remotely and be able to do on a massive scale and be able to get you back up and running in a quick timetable and add some potential automation into that too. Doesn't have to cost you extra for something you're not using. Backup is also helpful from the perspective of other cybersecurity incidents. And now we're killing two birds with one stone, as opposed to making you feel like you're not important, which by the way, you're meeting with me and you're at the top of the level, you're always important. We've had this long-lasting relationship for X number of years, and there's a reason for that. It's because we believe in you and you believe in us, and that's why we believe that you're very important, along with all of our strategic partners with Dynamic Network Solutions.
So I have not done this with anyone else, but I was just curious with someone, what would they say, right? If you're a business owner, you're an IT services business, and by the way, there's going to be another CrowdStrike. It's going to be a different technology, different company,
Yeah,
different outage, different time.
different sector, whatever.
It's going to happen. And by the way, before CrowdStrike, like 30 or 45 days before that, the entire auto dealership industry in the entire country was basically down, right? So
Correct. Yeah.
it's just like the next one comes. So like, how do you handle that? And you heard from somebody on how they would try and handle that. I mean, I don't know if I would have gotten that if I didn't, number one, know Sam and had a chance to have this conversation with him. So if that's not an example of something that you would learn, not at a 45-minute death by PowerPoint, but in a networking environment, I don't know what is. I mean, I want to hear that from somebody that's been through it.
Yeah.
That's why we
I mean,
create.
outside of that, and I don't know how else you're going to learn anything rather than George just springing up something on you like 5 seconds ago without being unplanned at all. And
That's
that's
the best
community
part of these
minds.
sessions. I love that. I love that. No, hey, you did great. I appreciate you giving us your angle on that. And quite frankly,
Yeah.
this is the type of stuff that should happen more often. I mean, because everybody has a different opinion on how to address this, right? I know some people, Sam, would have said, "Well, I'll just charge you more if you want, to be moved up to the VIP status." But you went the other way. You're like, do you really want to do that? Like, is it worth it to you? Like, why don't we come up with a different way to handle this rather than me just charging you a tax? But
Yeah.
some
Because,
may
like,
have
the other
different.
thing at the end of the day, it's long lasting relationships versus short term net gain. And so, like, if anybody who takes the first route and says, okay, I'll charge you a VIP rate or whatever the case may be, you're not building a long-term relationship. You're just doing short-term gains. And so, yeah, you're going to be great for a year until I roll around and I go sniffing at your client and I can undercut your price because you're charging another $200 or $300 or $400 VIP cost. And I can easily walk into your client and say, but you're a VIP every day. There's no VIP cost because we treat all of our clients as VIPs. You always build yourself into that trap by the client. The client wants to give you money, and people are always saying like, "Hey, take it every time. And sometimes the best course of action is to not fall into the trap and not take it, to build that long-term relationship. And more importantly, you need to tell it to them to their face. By them knowing that, they understand that there's transparency in this relationship, which is what they like. And more importantly, they like people who put all the cards on the table. Like, hey, I can make a custom plan to just charge you whatever you want to make you feel better, but you're gonna be paying for something you're not gonna use. We should more invest into things that you would definitely benefit from and would still accomplish your goal at the end of the day. And that's the reason why I mentioned the backup stuff. And you really try to push things from that perspective, because now you're telling them, hey, I see what you're asking for. I'm trying to address the thing that you're asking for. But the way that you're doing it is, there's nothing wrong with it. However, like, this is a better way. And this is going to be more beneficial for you at the end of the day. And so many people.
Yeah, during the town hall session in Denver, I want to see what the role play is for. Well, Southwest is still running Windows 3.1. It's working for them. Why do I have to keep updating? But we'll leave that. We'll leave that for Denver.
We'll leave that one for Denver. If those planes make it to Denver, we'll see.
Hey, Southwest has a major hub in Denver. Sam, thanks for jumping on. I know you're a busy guy. Can't wait to see you in Denver in a couple weeks.
Yeah, likewise.
I love this, by the way. I know I totally like curveballed you, but you did great. So I really appreciate you for entertaining that.
Thanks, man. I mean, like, there's no way to do it wrong, but I think I did a pretty solid job too at the same time. So, like, the more of those exercises are great, but happy to be throwing curveballs your way.
100%. Guys, this session was recorded. Go back and rewind that little role play we did there at the end. And I asked the question, do you do this internally? Do you have other people, tell you how they would handle it? Like, are you too worried, right? Like, hey, they're in the same business I am. I don't want to share the secrets, but like, if sometimes it's good to get other feedback or points of view on how to handle like a crisis situation like that. And by the way, not theoretical. I bet you that type of conversation happened in the last 90 days, 60 days, 30 days after a major incident, which I'm going to remind you one more time. There's got to be another major incident, and then one after that, and one after that. You can't control that part of it. It's what you do to, get ahead of that, right? So I digress. Sam, can't wait to do this in person. Talk soon, my friend. And for everyone else, catch you on the next one.
All right. Take it easy, everybody. Thanks, George.
Yeah.